Someone about that who might know a thing or two. Joining us now, a member of the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Mika.
Obviously, there is this push and even some support by the NRA, but you heard Heidi. This could end up having some sort of caveat that, doesn't really ultimately get to where we want to go. What do you think?
Well, this is one of the first times we've heard Republicans even open to talking about any kind of restrictions like this. And I think it's very important to have this discussion and to pass something. Action is necessary here. The fact that these bump stocks are legal when in fact they do something illegal. They convert a semi-automatic into an automatic or machine gun. And that's what they do. And they should be banned. Yeah. The guy had a dozen of them in a hotel room. And by the way, none of those innocent people, over 500 injured, 59 killed, could have protected themselves by shooting up to a 32nd floor hotel room. So there are a number of us, including some Republicans, that have supported sensible background checks, in addition to, of course, banning things like bump stocks. And so I'm hopeful that we will be able to take action. There is an opening here, and it's time to do something sensible. The narrow is to get at what just happened, but you also could look at revisiting the background check issue, which is the gun show loophole.
Senator Nick Confessore here. I'm wondering if you think it is likely that Congress will actually look at a narrowly tailored gun control bill on the bump stock when the NRA is talking really about a bigger bill that would give them a huge win and maybe toss a goodie on the bump stocks to the gun control people.
You know, I think at this point, when you have 59 people having dead with funerals this week, the thought that people are looking for a political win when the vast majority of people in this country want some sensible background checks, I don't think that's how they should be looking at it. I think they should be looking at how can we get support to take action so this doesn't happen again, that someone can be in a hotel room shooting down at a concert and killing innocent people.
Senator, you plan to introduce legislation that would force tech companies to disclose details on who buys political ads. A measure only TV providers currently face, but obviously there's so many different outlets now where people get these ads. How would it work?
Well, first of all, let's look at what's happened here. We have multiple intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, saying that Russia tried to interfere in our election. We now know that they purchased 3,000 Facebook ads and probably a lot more on other online platforms for $100,000 in rubles. And guess what? Under American law, there is no way they have to register those ads, or there's no proof that they existed. So all that Senator Warner and I are proposing here is to simply even the playing field and make sure that when you place an ad on TV, including on MSNBC, when you place an ad, you have to register it. When are you running it? How much does it cost? When $1.4 billion was spent on online ads in the last election, it's time to make sure that our laws are catching up to the technology that's been used to influence our electorate. Our Constitution was created so that we were self-governing. We don't want to be influenced by foreign entities. We want to have the freedom to make our own decisions.
It seems pretty obvious. I'm curious about GOP support for this.
We don't know yet. That's one of the reasons that we are waiting a week here to introduce it, to again go back to some of them and talk to them. None of them want foreign government influence either. As Marco Rubio once said, one election it was one candidate, one party. Next time it'll be the other. And one other thing to make clear here, this isn't about like you wanting to post a cat video.
Right.
Okay, this is not about free internet. This is about paid political advertising.
John Meacham.
Senator, about the opposition and the culture of the Senate. This week, Senator Corker announced he was leaving. A fairly moderate Republican in the South. The governor of Tennessee said he was not going to run. I'm wondering, do you feel that Republicans you can deal with are becoming an ever more vanishing breed? Is there, or do you have some hope about reaching across the aisle?
I continue to have hope for reaching across the aisle, and that's because I work with people every day, people like Senator Cornyn. We just passed a bill yesterday. We have worked together and continue to do that, and I can go through a whole bevy of names, including Senator Lindsey Graham, but for me, I look for the common ground where I can find it. Am I concerned about what just happened in that Alabama election and who won? Yes. The more you add people who see their job as just standing on their own, throwing punches instead of trying to go in the middle for the people of America, then you have trouble. But for the most part, I still find people in the Senate that I can work with across the aisle, and certainly two of the issues that we just discussed, doing something common sense on guns with the bump stocks and doing something about these online ads that are rampant. Those would be two good examples where I continue to be hopeful we'll be able to do something.
Senator, make me feel, Donnie Deutsch, I'd like to feel hopeful as far as the hands across the aisle, but when I do look at Judge Moore, that seems to be more now what's coming as the rule versus the exception. Everything that we see, everything we understand, everything we feel. Tell me why I should be hopeful and not fearful that that's going to become the norm.
Right. Well, two reasons. One is that when we are, again, confronted with major issues like the debt ceiling, like the budget in this last year, people have been able to come across the aisle. The second reason is that the elections are going to be coming up in 2018. I still have faith in the American people. It was Abraham Lincoln that said public sentiment is everything. And while they are clearly having major issues in the Republican Party and divides, I believe that the American people are going to say, what kind of world do I want here? And that we are going to gain in these elections. That is up to the American people. It's up to my party to be able to make the case and reach out to people that certainly didn't support us in rural areas in the last election, but it has happened before. So I have faith in the American people through the election process. I always have, as long as it's a fair process and Russia isn't influencing it. And then the second thing is that there are still good people that want to work across the aisle.
All right, Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. And John
It's
Meacham,
great to be on.
Thank you as well.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.